Thanks for all your hard work, David. These are better because of you. Also, how sticky would your hands have to be to climb on walls like Spider-Man? Better put, how much of your skin's surface area would you need to devote to sticky biological stick pad stuff like geckos have if you wanted to climb like Spider-Man? Well, there's actually a chart in a paper about this. So if you look at this here chart from a real scientific paper, you can see that geckos devote about 4% of their total body surface area to those sticky toe pads. And those toe pads have nanoscale fibers on them that interact atomically with the surfaces that they're trying to scale, so they're kind of like using atomic clinginess to climb walls. But they only weigh a few hundred grams, maybe 100 grams or more. You weigh literally hundreds of times more than your average gecko. So how much of your body's surface area would you need to devote to similar kinds of pads if you were just This same figure figures out that it would be around 40%. That is almost like devoting your entire front of your body to just being a sticky pad that you throw yourself against the wall. It's kind of like those Velcro jumps where you put a Velcro suit on and you jump against a wall. That would be you. Not very heroic. It would change you from something like this to more like this. Wow. Powerful. Hello and welcome to another edition of Because Science Footnotes, the companion show to Because Science, where I take all your nerdiest comments, corrections, and questions and stick some science to them with my sticky knowledge appendages. And then I tell you what's coming up next on this channel. Hint, it rhymes with Schmodzilla. They'll never guess it. But getting right down to it, in the last episode of Because Science, we were returning to our kind of series, You Don't Want X Superpower. And this time I said, you do not want to live forever. You do not want immortality. And I seem to have struck some kind of fictional nerve here, saying that you do not want biological immortality or otherwise. Wow, a lot of comments. So what did you have to say? There are so many comments on this video. It hasn't even been 7 or 8 hours here in the void, and there's already over 3,000 of them. So obviously I cannot read them all. From the gist of it, it seems like most of you think that you definitely want immortality. So let me just, at the start of this, lay out a couple of points before we get to everything that you have to say. So what I think most people, when they think about immortality, are forgetting is that it does not come along with other superpowers if we're just evaluating immortality. You're not a god, you're not omniscient, you're not invulnerable. So you are not necessarily some Dr. Manhattan style thing anymore. A lot of you point out that you want to live to the end of the universe and see everything happen. Yes, that would be cool, but you could also just end up being at the exact same place you are in life and just working a million dead-end jobs. Life doesn't owe you ultimate success and wealth and happiness, and therefore having an infinite amount of life doesn't guarantee you that will happen. So you could just have a very long, very boring, or very bad life too. Because we have no data on what immortality is like either way, both of those possibilities right now are equally likely in my mind. Now, there is a popular video in this space that some of you have pointed out to me by CPG Gray, who says, no, we should defeat death. It will be better. Just because death is natural doesn't mean it's good. And I agree with you, Mr. Gray. That would be a naturalistic fallacy, assuming something is good just because it's natural. Just because something is a natural supplement doesn't mean that it works, doesn't mean that it's good. But because, like I said, we have no data on what immortality would be either way, it's also a naturalistic fallacy to just assume that never dying would be naturally better, if that makes sense. Now, I agree that human life, the average human life, would change radically. Just think of how the timeline of the average person would change if you had a lifespan that was 9,000 years. How long would you spend in school? When would you get married? How many kids would you have, and when, if you never aged? All of these things would radically change society and the way that we interacted with it. But what I'm saying is that if you evaluate immortality alone, without any other things, we cannot assume that technology will always keep pace with immortality, that we will cure every disease, that will make everything perfectly safe in the world and in the universe. Then you can still get sick, you can still have a terrible time of things, you can still get bored. These things to me are still equally likely to happen to you in the average lifetime. You're not suddenly a god. And some of you were pointing out that maybe all your friends and family could become immortal too if this happens. Okay, but pop culture-wise, what are we really looking at here? Average immortality power. You just get it. Highlander style. You get it. You don't get to pass it along to everyone. When the Flash gets the Speed Force, he doesn't just like get to hand it to anyone that he wants and then they're all in the Speed Force now and you all can live forever and travel back in time. That's not what we're talking about here. It is easy to imagine ourselves as some kind of Highlanders of the galaxy, wandering Earth for thousands of years until technology takes us to the furthest stars in the cosmos and we colonize everything and we see everything and we're the last human at the end of time. However, it is just as easy to imagine you living an average life forever and nothing being great and you never making it to the stars because you're just the average Joe. You don't accumulate unlimited wealth. You don't accumulate unlimited knowledge and you're not on the first trip to Mars or the first trip to Andromeda or whatever. Those things are just as likely too. Just because you have unlimited time to do something doesn't mean that you are necessarily going to do that thing. There could be things that you just cannot manage to do. So just to highlight some legitimate counter arguments to what I think a lot of you are saying. So let's get to what a lot of you are saying. Comment number 1 comes from Fatman, who says, this video literally did nothing to dissuade me from wanting to have biological immortality. All right, well, thanks for watching. Another comment comes from Stormageddon, Dark Lord of All, and Mr. Funkus 420, sick, and Travis Storm, Hammer Steel, the Asylum Cat, and others who say, I want to see how the entire universe plays out. From now until the maybe heat death of the universe, I want to see it all, I want to do it all, and I get that with biological immortality. Like what I said before, just because you can live forever doesn't necessarily mean that you will get to do everything. You could just get hit by a bus. You're not Dr. Manhattan, and you're not invulnerable. That is a different superpower. I think pop culture has actually conflated the two powers, where if you're immortal, you assume that you're invulnerable to death at all. But what we were evaluating was biological immortality, so you could still die. And like I said, it's 100% likely that one of these unlikely ways to die is going to end your life if it's not aging. You're gonna get killed by a coconut before you explore Mars, probably. Arthur Marcelino de la Cerda says, good video, I really like it. But the title is wrong, isn't it? I'm sure that 99.many9% of people would definitely take 9,000 years of life over our average lifespan. Let me be honest with you here. You pose the same question to me. How long would I choose to live? I'm gonna be honest, and I will say it is longer than what I'm probably gonna live to. I mean, I am immortal, but if I was like you and human, I would choose a few hundred years. Maybe. Not 9,000, not infinity. I think there is probably a time value on what you want to experience, and it comes before a billion years. It must be. I'm tired of living right now. Frequent commenter Ian O'Gendy points out a very cool Doctor Who episode. I'm not going to spoil it if you haven't seen it. Oh, take the comment down. If you haven't seen it, but there's a very cool Doctor Who episode that deals with all of the implications of immortality in a very thought out way. Obviously, as many of you pointed out, in a video that focuses necessarily more on the sciencey side of this power, we couldn't get into all the political, personal, philosophical, existential circumstances that would surround real immortality. We only have 12 to 15 minute videos, we can't get into all of that, but apparently there's a Doctor Who episode with Maisie Williams that does it really, really well, and Ian recommends it. Check it out. Thanks for the previous mention, by the way. Again, much appreciated. I always look forward to your videos. Thank you. But the nerdiest and most aggressive comment this week comes from Requiem for Pain, who says, totally, but after seeing the video, I'm gonna debunk each point. False. You'd see your loved ones die. No, they'd be immortal too. Lifespan is for everyone, not only for me. Why? You'll become sick. Well, I'm studying biomedics. It's my job to find the solution, the real solution to every single hidden health problem on the planet. Okay, but like I said, no guarantee that all illnesses are curable or that we will ever find them. That's my point. Your brain has limited capacity. False. 1, we have other ways to remember things. What are cameras for? No, I don't know. 2, actually forgetting something means that we can experience them for the first time. Oh yes, I have tons of things that I want to experience for the first time again, including but not limited to Dark Souls. And 3, if we really need to expand our brain capacity, we can do so with bionic implants, transhumanism. Okay, man, like, I don't know about all that, man. Look, I was just trying to evaluate the power just like in a vacuum here. I'm not, well, you got more. But what is the point of experiencing the same things forever? The point is not losing your sentience. If you're still alive, that is all that really matters. Is it though? Is living if you're not living well? You'll be bored. Absolutely not. False. Even if this was the case, the most boring life is still better than not experiencing life at all. Is it? What about entropy? I did not say that. We have billions of years to find a solution. Maybe isn't really necessary. And also, car crashes? No, in 10 years, cars are gonna be autonomous, dude. Okay, fair. I mean, that will lower the incidence of perception. Both self-perception and surroundings perception is a miracle that happens one single time. If you die, you're done for good. Not only losing your future and your present, but also your past. You lose yourself forever, as if you've never really been born, never really existed in the first place. I cannot think of anything worse, more useless and stupid. If you die, everything vanishes. Whoa, ho, ho, ho. Hey, man. Wow. I mean, yes, if you die, you stop. But as far from you not mattering to any part of the past or the future, even if you leave this plane, I mean, that's objectively not true. I mean, it doesn't matter to you, maybe. What you do in life echoes in eternity. Somebody said that. Clark Phoenix. Nope. Gregory Balboa. Nope. Russell Crowe. Those other people were not people. You obviously have a lot of strong opinions and a lot of corrections for me, and hey, I appreciate the effort. And for that, you are indeed, Requiem for Pain, a super nerd. Ow! Oh! Pain! But of course, obviously, I'm not always right. I once drank an entire cup of vinegar because I thought it was water. I was like, wow, clear liquid, I'm thirsty. Blah, pfft, like that. Popular culture has like prioritized the idea that everything that's dangerous that's a liquid has some sort of color to it. Like it's like a deep green or red and it's bubbling or something like that. Most things that will kill you in a science lab are perfectly clear and they look like water. Don't drink them. Our first correction, and there are a lot of very well thought out corrections that I'm gonna highlight here. This one comes from Hanselite, who says, all the downsides you describe to immortality are not actually downsides. They are part of life regardless of how long that life lasts. Loss of loved ones, memory, untimely deaths, terminal diseases are all things that people can experience numerous times throughout a typical human lifespan. Immortality may increase the total number of times they are experienced throughout a life, but it isn't introducing anything that isn't already there. I agree. Yes, the average human life is filled with ups and downs. In Aristotelian ethics, he advised that you would want to flourish and find the golden mean of your life rather than just assuming your entire life is gonna be all good or all bad. And any life is gonna have lots of bad, lots of good, but it's gonna kind of average out to that golden mean. You have to determine where that mean is going to be and flourish. Find acceptance and fulfillment in life and not just have all these radical ups and downs. That doesn't make a good or a bad life. But I will say that even though the average human life has all of its ups and downs, that if you were to live forever for real, some lives, because they are very lucky, don't experience all of the terrible things that could happen. If you were immortal, you are guaranteeing 100% that you are going to experience them. So would you want to guarantee that you will encounter these potentially terrible things in your life if you were immortal? The calculus for everyone would be different. Would you take a few thousand years for a couple of terrible things happening? Maybe, but that's up to you. For me, I just want to live a nice couple hundo. Fellow ancient Greek scholar Acertes Hollow says, going to have to disagree with you this time around, Kyle. Let me also say, it's fine to disagree with me. We're talking about a magical, fictional power that is not going to happen. We might be able to deal with aging or make people live for extended periods of time, maybe even forever, but you're never gonna have magical immortality and vulnerability, see the end of the universe kind of thing. So if you disagree with me on my opinions about a fictional thing, totally fine. Just give your reasoning. Acertes says, I think immortality is still something people would greatly benefit from. To start out, statistically, yes, over time your chances of getting in a car accident or whatever approaches 100%. However, each time you get into the car and drive, your odds of getting into a car accident remain constant. Just because you haven't gotten into a car accident in 1,000 years doesn't mean you are more likely to get into a car accident in year 1,000 versus year 50. Your odds are still just as good. That's not how odds work. So you are right. If you're looking at isolated cases, basis. What are your chances of getting in something like a car accident or getting struck by lightning just on a day-to-day basis? That is a static value, depending on outside factors, sure. But over the course of your life, if you were to live for 1,000 years, those odds kind of stack up after a while. To use a medical example, your chances of getting cancer at any one day, just being diagnosed with cancer tomorrow, is pretty low. If you're an average person, you're relatively healthy. However, if you live to be 80 or so, the average chance that you will get some kind of cancer sometime in your life is around 40 to 50%. There's a big difference in the kinds of odds we're evaluating here. So I would say still that immortality sort of guarantees that these unlikely things are going to happen to you if you live forever. What 3268 nice was taken. Totally hear what Kyle is saying, and I love this show. However, it's fine to disagree with me. However, it kind of sounds like biological immortality would go like this. You live longer in a healthy body. Sounds great. You experience a lot more and have more time to master different hobbies. Sounds great. Heck, you even have more time in general. And it's at a certain point you would have to stop working because you'd have so much money saved up. Fine. Sounds great. Eventually, you get to choose to go out in a blaze of glory, like a gruesome motorcycle accident or some such thing. Seems fine to me. I'd take that deal. I'm not even going to address your points. This got me thinking that, as many of you pointed out, if you could choose when to die, you had biological immortality, but it was Highlander style, and you could just choose to have someone cut your head off and end your life. That might not be so bad, because you can choose when to get off the ride. But how would you choose to go out? Gruesome motorcycle accident sounds kind of terrible, and it would probably scare a bunch of people, traumatize some kids who were on the highway with you. Probably not the best option. What I would do, and you made me think about this, but you know, I'm a millennial. I'm a many millennium old millennial. But I'm a millennial, so I have a lust for death, and it made me think of how I would go out in a blazing glory. And you know how I would do it? I would rent a helicopter and dig a hole in the desert, the exact size of an average grave. I would tie guide wires from the grave all the way up to the helicopter, and then I would attach myself to the guide wires, and I would jump out of the helicopter like this, and I would fall all the way down perfectly, back first down directly into the grave from the helicopter. Just, and you're already in the grave, and then the impact causes some ejecta that covers your body with dirt. One-step grave. It's a millennial's dream. That's what I would do. But the nerdiest correction at the time I'm filming this video, I gotta give to James Vuncanen, who says, "Hey Kyle, longtime viewer, first-time commenter. I agree with your interpretation of immortality as being a bad thing in many ways, but that's why I view this as live life as long as you want to live. And radical, indefinite human life extension is a better term than real immortality." And James says this would change society in a number of ways. You could choose to die like a permanent form of retirement. You could allow future generations room to breathe as older generations accumulated wealth and power and technology. Wakes could be conducted while you are still alive as a kind of celebration, done before you died, not after. Jobs wouldn't be anywhere near as important. People would have like enlarged hobbies as a result of that. Everyone's views on the economy, earnings, self-worth would be completely rewritten. Assuming current levels of fertility, people could have families literally whenever they wanted to, which removes the have them young or never have any problems with our limited lifespans we have now. And honestly, now that I think about it, this video covers a lot of stuff, but it doesn't take into account any of the sociological, economic, cultural implications or entire populations of immortals might impose upon us. That might make for another fantastic episode of Because Science. Well, I'm not doing Because Economics or Because Sociology because I know very little about those things. But I totally agree with you, James. If I could have done a 45-minute video going into all of my speculations about how society would change, I think it would be fascinating. And I think what I'm trying to get at here is that if you assume that immortality is going to be an amazing, superhero-like life that still has the vestiges of an average human life, like you still get to go home and chill out on the couch and, you know, have a great time or whatever. My argument is that immortality, like you said, would radically change your life and all of society, so much so that it would change how you live it, and we just are not sure if it's going to be good or bad, and I can see a lot of potential downsides. Doesn't mean there won't be any upsides, but I just wanted to point out all the little things that I think people may not be considering because pop culture has put it in our heads that immortality would be like one of the best superpowers. So for pointing this all out and giving it a lot of thought, James, you were indeed, wait, don't know if this will end up in your Footnotes episode, but I'm crossing my fingers. Hail science guitar riff. James, you are indeed a super nerd. Guitar riff. Now, moving right along to this week's episode of Because Science, it is the true size of Godzilla's flying monsters. Wow! That's right, in this week's episode of Because Science, we are trying to do something that I've been wanting to do for a long time, and that is calculate the actual size of giant winged beasts like you'd find in Godzilla, specifically Ghidorah, Mothra, and Rodan. If we use actual relationships that we know of real flyers on Earth and the scaling laws between them that say how big their wingspan should be, how many wing beats should they make every second, how much power should their muscles output, can we figure out exactly how large these already enormous animals, creatures, what have you, should be? I think we can, and the answer may surprise you. Clickbait! So go and watch the latest episode of Because Science, all about immortality, if you haven't yet, and why you don't want it, but you all think that I'm wrong, and leave me all your nerdiest comments, corrections, and questions at youtube.com/BecauseScience, facebook.com/BecauseScience, and at Because Science on Instagram and Twitter. And don't forget, identical twins are technically nature's clones, but if you call one of them a clone to their face, they may not like it.